Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. On a quiet Sunday evening, April gathered her courage and called a family meeting. Her parents, sensing the seriousness of the situation, sat attentively in the living room, concern evident on their faces. April's voice shook as she began to speak, her hands clasped tightly in her lap to hide their trembling. Mom, Dad, there's something important I need to tell you, something I've been struggling with for a long time. She took a deep breath, feeling Emily's reassuring presence beside her. I'm transgender. I've always felt like I was born in the wrong body. I'm not your son, I'm your daughter. The silence that followed felt eternal. April's heart pounded in her chest as she watched a myriad of emotions play across her parents' faces: shock, confusion, concern. Her mother was the first to speak, her voice soft and hesitant. How long have you felt this way? As long as I can remember, April replied, her voice gaining strength. But I've only recently found the courage to accept it and live as my true self. Her father, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. Is this why you've been so withdrawn lately? Why you've seemed different? April nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you, how you'd react. I was afraid you'd reject me. Her mother moved to sit beside her on the couch, wrapping an arm around April's shoulders. Oh, sweetheart, she said, her own eyes glistening with tears. We could never reject you. You're our child. Her father joined them, his expression a mix of concern and love. This is a lot to process, he admitted. But we love you unconditionally. We'll figure this out together, as a family. April broke down then, overwhelmed by relief and the outpouring of love from her parents. As they held her, murmuring words of comfort and acceptance, she felt a sense of completeness she'd never experienced before. Emily, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke up. I've known for a while, she admitted. I've been helping April explore her identity. She's still the same person we've always loved, just finally able to be her true self. Their parents looked at Emily with a mix of surprise and gratitude. Thank you for being there for your sister, their mother said, reaching out to squeeze Emily's hand. As the initial shock wore off, the conversation turned to practical matters. April's parents had questions about her chosen name, her plans for the future, how they could support her. I've been going by April, she told them, a small smile playing on her lips. It felt right, like a new beginning. Her father nodded, testing out the name. April, he repeated, as if trying to reconcile this new identity with the child he'd known. It's a beautiful name. They talked late into the night, discussing April's experiences, her hopes for the future, and the challenges that lay ahead. Her parents, though clearly still processing the information, promised their full support. We may make mistakes, her mother said, squeezing April's hand. We may use the wrong name or pronouns sometimes, but please be patient with us. We're learning and we want to do right by you. April felt a warmth spread through her chest, a sense of acceptance and love she'd barely dared to hope for. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Your support means everything to me. As the conversation wound down, April felt exhausted but profoundly relieved. The weight of her secret, which had been crushing her for so long, was finally lifted. That night, as she lay in bed, April reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. From the first tentative experiments with makeup to the growing confidence in her identity, from the fear of rejection to the overwhelming love and support she'd received. She thought of Emily's unwavering support, Zach's loving acceptance, and now her parents' commitment to standing by her side. For the first time in her life, April felt truly at peace with herself. She knew there would be challenges ahead, medical decisions to make, legal hurdles to overcome, and the ongoing process of living authentically in a world that wasn't always understanding. But she also knew that she wasn't facing these challenges alone. As she drifted off to sleep, April allowed herself to imagine the future, a future where she could live openly as herself, surrounded by love and acceptance. It was a future full of possibility, and for the first time, it felt within reach. The weeks following April's coming out to her parents were a whirlwind of activity and emotion. Her parents, true to their word, threw themselves into learning everything they could about supporting their transgender daughter. They attended support group meetings with April, had long conversations with Dr. Ramirez. Her father sometimes stumbled over pronouns, and her mother occasionally slipped and called her by her old name. But each time they would catch themselves, apologize sincerely, and try again. Their effort and dedication touched April deeply. One Saturday morning, April's mother knocked on her bedroom door, a hesitant smile on her face. "April, sweetheart, I was wondering if you'd like to go shopping together. I thought maybe we could pick out some new clothes for you." April felt a surge of emotion at her mother's gesture. Shopping for women's clothing had always been a clandestine activity, done in secret or with Emily's help. The idea of doing it openly, with her mother's support, was overwhelming. "I'd love that, Mom," she replied, her voice thick with unshed tears. The shopping trip was a revelation. April's mother helped her navigate the unfamiliar terrain of women's fashion, offering suggestions and encouragement. They laughed together over some of the more outrageous styles and shared quiet, emotional moments in the dressing room as April tried on clothes that finally felt right. As they sat in a cafe afterwards, surrounded by shopping bags, April's mother reached across the table to take her hand. "I want you to know how proud I am of you," she said, her eyes shining with tears. "Your bravery, your authenticity. It's inspiring. I'm honored to be your mother." April squeezed her mother's hand, too overwhelmed to speak. In that moment, she felt a deep sense of connection and understanding with her mother that she'd never experienced before. Meanwhile, April's relationship with Zach continued to grow stronger. He was a constant source of support and encouragement, always there to lift her spirits on difficult days or celebrate her victories, no matter how small. One evening, as they walked hand in hand through the park where April had first revealed her truth to him, Zach suddenly stopped, turning to face her with a serious expression. "April," he began, his voice filled with emotion, "these past few months with you have been the happiest of my life. You're the most amazing, brave, beautiful person I've ever met." April felt her heart begin to race as Zach dropped to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "I know we're young, and we have a lot of challenges ahead of us," he continued, opening the box to reveal a delicate silver ring. "But I want to face those challenges with you every day for the rest of our lives. April, will you marry me?" Tears streamed down April's face as she nodded, unable to form words. Zach slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into a deep hug. As they broke apart, both laughing and crying, April finally found her voice. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes?" The news of their engagement was met with joy from April's family. Emily squealed with delight, immediately launching into wedding planning mode. April's parents, though initially concerned about the young couple rushing into marriage, saw the depth of Zach and April's love and offered their blessing. As spring turned to summer, April's transition continued. She began hormone replacement therapy under the guidance of a specialized doctor, experiencing the physical and emotional changes with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Zach was there through it all, holding her hand during doctor's appointments and offering comfort during the mood swings that sometimes accompanied her hormonal shifts. April also took steps to legally change her name and gender marker on her official documents. The process was bureaucratic and at times frustrating, but with each form filled out and each official stamp received, April felt more and more like her true self was being recognized by the world. There were difficult moments, of course. Not everyone in their small town was as accepting as April's immediate circle, She occasionally faced stares or whispers when out in public, and there were a few painful incidents of misgendering or outright hostility. But for every negative experience, there were countless positive ones. Old friends reached out to offer support, teachers from her high school expressed their pride in her journey, and even a few strangers went out of their way to show kindness and acceptance. As summer drew to a close, April and Zach began to plan their future together. They decided to have a small, intimate wedding the following spring, giving April time to feel more comfortable in her transition and allowing them to save money for their new life together. One warm evening, as they sat on the porch swing at April's family home, Zach brought up a topic they'd been dancing around. "Have you thought about what you want to do after the wedding?" he asked, his arm draped comfortably around April's shoulders. "I know we talked about moving to the city for better job opportunities, but..." April nodded, understanding his hesitation. The idea of leaving the safety and support of her hometown was daunting, but she also felt a pull towards new horizons. I think I'm ready for a fresh start," she said slowly. "As much as I love it here, and as grateful as I am for everyone's support, part of me wants to go somewhere where I can just be April, without the weight of my past." Zach squeezed her shoulder gently. "I understand, and I'm with you. Wherever you want to go. We'll build our life together, on our own terms." They spent the next few hours dreaming about their future, the apartment they'd share, the jobs they hoped to find, the life they would build together. As the stars came out, twinkling in the clear night sky, April felt a sense of peace and excitement about what lay ahead. The months leading up to the wedding were a flurry of activity. April continued with her transition, each day feeling more and more comfortable in her own skin. She and Zach found a small apartment in a nearby city, close enough to visit family often, but far enough to give them the fresh start they craved. On a perfect spring day, surrounded by their closest friends and family, April and Zach exchanged vows in a simple, heartfelt ceremony. April, resplendent in a flowing white gown, felt a sense of completeness as she promised her love and commitment to Zach. As they shared their first dance as a married couple, April caught sight of her reflection in a mirror across the room. The person looking back at her was finally truly herself. April, a beloved daughter, sister, friend, and now wife. Zach followed her gaze, a soft smile playing on his lips. "What are you thinking?" he asked, pulling her closer. April rested her head on his shoulder, a contented sigh escaping her. "I'm thinking about how far I've come," she murmured, "and how excited I am for where we're going." Zach pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. "We've got our whole lives ahead of us," he said, "and I can't wait to spend every moment of it with you." The first few months of marriage were a whirlwind of adjustments and new experiences. April and Zach moved into their small apartment in the city, spending weekends unpacking boxes and arranging furniture. Their home slowly came together, a reflection of their shared tastes and the life they were building together. April found a job at a local bookstore, her warm personality and love of literature making her a natural fit. The store's owner, a kind-hearted woman named Margaret, took April under her wing, showing her the ropes and introducing her to the regular customers. One quiet afternoon, as April was restocking the romance section, an elderly woman approached her with a gentle smile. "Excuse me, dear," the woman said, her voice soft and slightly quavering. "I'm looking for a book my granddaughter recommended, but I can't seem to find it." April smiled warmly. "Of course, I'd be happy to help. Do you remember the title or author?" As they searched for the book together, the woman, who introduced herself as Rose, chatted amiably about her granddaughter's recent coming out as a lesbian. "It was quite a surprise," Rose admitted. "But seeing her so happy, so true to herself, well, it's a beautiful thing, isn't it?" April felt a warmth spread through her chest. "It really is," she agreed, thinking of her own journey. Rose patted April's hand affectionately. "You remind me of her, you know. That same light in your eyes, like you've found your place in the world." Tears pricked at the corners of April's eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. "That means more than you know." As Rose left with her book, April felt a renewed sense of purpose. She realized that simply by being herself, by living authentically, she could make a difference in people's lives. Meanwhile, Zach had started his new job at a local tech startup. The fast-paced environment was challenging, but he thrived on the energy and innovation. He came home each day full of stories about the projects he was working on and the interesting people he was meeting. One evening, as they were preparing dinner together, Zach brought up a topic that had been on his mind. "So, there's this company barbecue coming up next weekend," he said, chopping vegetables with careful precision. "I was thinking maybe we could go together." April paused, a mix of excitement and anxiety washing over her. She hadn't met any of Zach's coworkers yet, always finding excuses to avoid social gatherings. The thought of putting herself out there, of potentially facing judgment or awkward questions, was daunting. Sensing her hesitation, Zach set down his knife and turned to face her. "We don't have to if you're not comfortable," he said gently. "I just thought it might be nice to meet everyone, and I'm kind of dying to show off my beautiful wife." April couldn't help but smile at that. She took a deep breath, steeling herself. "No, you're right. It's time. I can't hide forever, and I don't want to. I want to be part of your life, all of it." Zach pulled her into a tight hug, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "I'm so proud of you," he murmured, "and I'll be right beside you the whole time, I promise." The day of the barbecue arrived, bright and sunny. April spent extra time getting ready, wanting to look her best. She chose a floral sundress that made her feel confident and feminine, pairing it with comfortable sandals and natural makeup. As they drove to the park where the event was being held, April felt her nerves mounting. Zach reached over, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. "You've got this," he said with a smile. "Just be your amazing self." They arrived to find the park bustling with activity. Children ran around playing games, the smell of grilling meat filled the air, and groups of adults chatted animatedly over drinks. Zach led April towards a group of his co-workers, his hand resting supportively on the small of her back. "Hey, everyone," Zach called out as they approached. "I'd like you to meet my wife, April." April felt all eyes turn to her, and for a moment she froze. But then she saw the genuine smiles, the welcoming expressions, and she felt herself relax. "It's so nice to finally meet you," a woman with curly red hair exclaimed, stepping forward to give April a hug. "I'm Melissa. Zach's told us so much about you." As the introductions continued, April found herself drawn into easy conversation. Zach's coworkers were curious about her job at the bookstore, eager to share funny stories about Zach's first days at work, and generally warm and welcoming. As the afternoon wore on, April found herself genuinely enjoying the gathering. She laughed at inside jokes, shared her own stories, and even joined in a game of frisbee. For the first time in a long while, she felt completely at ease in a group of new people, simply being herself without fear or hesitation. At one point, she caught Zach watching her from across the picnic area, a look of pure love and pride on his face. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the park, April and Zach said their goodbyes and headed home. In the car, April let out a contented sigh. "Thank you for encouraging me to come," she said, reaching over to take Zach's hand. "I had a wonderful time."
"I'm so glad. You were amazing, April. Everyone loved you."
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.